Sometimes students have a hard time remembering what goes into the various pieces of the cost of goods sold or the cost of sales and the selling general and admin. And this is just page 50 out of the Lowe's 10K where they tell you what they're doing. It's some companies add more detail, some add less. There's a reason that a 10K can run 100, 200 pages long. That's because companies describe all this stuff that the accountants put together in exquisite detail for the non-accountants. Now, you've seen a lot of this stuff as you're going through the textbook. Well, let's look and see how Lowe's is describing cost of sales, and then we'll look at the selling, general, and admin expenses. All right, under cost of sales, the total cost of the product sold, including the purchase cost, net of vendor funds. Okay, the vendor is the seller. So the purchase cost, net anything you have to give to the vendor. Freight expenses associated with moving inventories from vendor to selling location. That's when you buy this stuff. Remember, y'all had free on-board shipping and free on-board destination. Okay, so free on-board shipping, it means that you're going to have to pay the shipping cost. Free on-board destination means that the seller pays the shipping cost. Okay, so freight expenses associated with moving merchandise from vendors to selling locations where Lowe's has to pay for the transportation cost. That's why it's important to keep track of. Costs associated with operating the company's distribution network, including payroll and benefit and occupancy costs. What that means is that the part of the company that is warehouse delivery and stuff, those are salaries and warehouses and stuff, but they take all of that stuff and load it into the cost of goods sold because it's part and parcel of delivering the product to the customer. Depreciation of assets associated with the company's distribution network. So some depreciation expenses are allocated to cost of goods sold. Some are part of selling, general, and admin. Cost of installation services provided. So if you buy a hot tub from Lowe's and Lowe's is going to install it for you, the cost of goods sold includes not only the hot tub itself, but whatever they have to pay to get the thing hooked up at your house. And of course, they charge you that plus a markup. Costs associated with shipping and handling to customers, as well as directly from vendors. Depreciation of assets used in delivering products. Costs associated with inventory shrinkage and obsolescence. So if somebody steals crap and shoplifts a chainsaw, it just gets folded into the cost of goods sold. If Lowe's buys a load of hammers that they can't sell, and they have to then turn around and say, oh, well, we paid $10 these hammers and I can't sell them. I'm going to sell them to the dollar store for 50 cents each. Then that obsolescence or that lower of cost of market on the inventory cost, it's just another cost of doing business. So cost of goods sold includes a lot of stuff other than just what we paid the vendor to buy his product and put it on our shelf. All right. Conversely, let's talk about selling, general, and admin expense. All right, now cost of sales is product expenses, period expenses, selling, general, and admin. Payroll and benefit costs for the retail and corporate employees. Retail are the people wearing the aprons and checking you out when you go through the register. Corporate employees would be the vice president of personnel and the secretary of the president, all those other things. They don't have, if they don't show up for work, it doesn't affect sales. If they work longer on the weekend, it doesn't affect sales. That's independent of the level of activity over in the stores. So that's why we separate those two out. Let's look at some of the others. Occupancy cost of retail and corporate facilities. That means if you're leasing or renting or whatever, the cost of the corporate headquarters, the cost of the retail building, that's the store you're selling into. All right, now when they were talking about the distribution network over here in cost of sales, that's the warehouse and shipping stuff. And the retail space is the stores themselves. The cost of advertising, third party in-store service costs. All right, third party is other people doing stuff in the store for you. Tender costs, including bank charges, costs associated with credit card interchange fees. That's all that bank reconciliation crap y'all were looking at. Costs associated with self-insured plans, that's the insurance. A self-insured plan, self-insured is an oxymoron because insurance requires you to transfer the risk to somebody else. A lot of large corporations, instead of buying insurance, they self-insure, which means they set aside funds and pay claims that an insurance company would pay, and then they buy insurance for catastrophes. But that's just a cost of doing business, just like having a maid, just like having the parking attendant, just like having the vice president of personnel or all those other people working there. Long-lived asset impairment losses, gains and losses on disposal of assets, and exit costs. That is bad stuff happening to our long-lived assets that we are normally depreciating, but then something bad happens to them, that gets folded into SG&A. Other administrative costs such as supplies, travel, and entertainment. Okay, cool. Entertainment expenses. Anyway, your textbook has been talking about this stuff all along, and I know this stuff's kind of new because you're just getting into the business world. But Lowe's goes out here and explains the stuff that goes into the various pieces because they're thinking that people aren't accountants who are reading this, but buried someplace in 128 pages, on here it's on page 50, they do the same thing your textbook is doing. Explain what goes into the various elements that are reported in the 2 lines of the income statement.